At 95, Clint Eastwood finally tells the truth about Rob Reiner. Clint Eastwood was born Clinton Eastwood Jr. on May 31, 1930 in San Francisco, California during the Great Depression. His early years were filled with lots of moves as his family went from place to place across California looking for work. This moving around a lot taught him to be independent and to keep his feelings to himself. Eastwood was a quiet, thoughtful child who liked to watch and listen more than talk. These traits would later become part of who he was on screen. Music was important in his life early on, especially jazz and piano. This gave him a love for rhythm, mood, and keeping things simple. These things would later shape how he made movies. After finishing high school, Eastwood worked many different jobs, including lifeguard, lumberjack, and gas station worker. These jobs taught him about regular working people and made him respect hard work and never giving up. His path to becoming an actor didn't happen right away. It happened slowly, almost by accident, after he left the U.S. Army and started looking for chances in Hollywood. Eastwood's early acting career was full of rejection and not knowing what would happen. Universal Pictures signed him in the mid-1950s, but they let him go after small roles didn't impress the bosses. They criticized his looks, his voice, and said he didn't have charisma. Instead of giving up, these failures made him stronger. He kept studying acting, taking small roles, and patiently waiting for a chance that would let him grow instead of just fitting in. That chance came in 1959 with the TV show Rawhide. Playing Rowdy Yates, Eastwood got steady work and people started knowing who he was over 8 seasons. Even though the role gave him money and fame, he felt creatively stuck and wanted more challenging material. His willingness to take a big risk, leaving American TV to work in Italian movies, would change his life and movie history. In the mid-1960s, Eastwood took a role that didn't pay much in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. These movies completely changed the Western genre and introduced Eastwood's famous man with no name character. This was a quiet, morally complicated anti-hero who didn't talk much but whose stare said everything. Eastwood's performance changed what it meant to be masculine on screen. He wasn't flashy or talkative. Instead, his power came from holding back, his presence, and what he suggested without saying. The success of these films made him a star around the world and forever changed how Westerns looked and felt. More importantly, they gave Eastwood control. Control over what roles he chose, his creative direction, and his professional independence. Coming back to Hollywood in the late 1960s and 1970s, Eastwood became one of the biggest stars in the business. Movies like Dirty Harry made his image as a tough, no-nonsense enforcer of justice even stronger. The character of Harry Callahan started big arguments. Some people praised it as showing how frustrated the public was with crime. Others criticized it as showing authoritarianism. Eastwood, however, always pushed back against simple explanations. He insisted his characters showed moral complexity, not just one political view. During this time, Eastwood showed amazing variety, appearing in westerns, action movies, thrillers, romantic dramas, and comedies. Movies like Play Misty for Me, High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Every Which Way But Loose, and Escape from Alcatraz showed his range and growing confidence behind the camera. He wasn't just acting. He was learning, trying new things, and quietly getting ready for his biggest change yet. As a director, Clint Eastwood developed his own special style. It was marked by simplicity, keeping emotions restrained, and deep respect for actors. He liked doing very few takes, using natural lighting, and telling stories without overdoing it. This let performances feel real and stories unfold without being too much. His films often explored themes of getting old, regret, redemption, violence, and moral consequences. These were subjects rarely treated with such depth in mainstream movies. His directing achievements reached their peak with Unforgiven in 1992. This was a different kind of Western that tore down the myths of heroism and violence that had defined the genre. The film earned Eastwood Academy Awards for Best Director and Best Picture. This firmly established him as one of the great filmmakers of his generation. He followed this success with an amazing run of critically praised films including Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, Letters from Iwo Jima, Gran Torino, Changeling, and American Sniper. His praise extends far beyond Hollywood. Eastwood has been honored with 3 César Awards, one of Europe's most prestigious film honors. This reflects the deep respect he commands within the international movie community. In recognition of his huge influence on American film culture, he was also awarded the American Film Institute's Life Achievement Award. This is a tribute reserved for artists whose work has fundamentally shaped the identity and evolution of cinema in the United States. In 2000, Eastwood's global status was cemented when the Venice Film Festival gave him the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement. This is one of the most respected honors in international film. This award celebrated not just individual films, but an entire body of work marked by moral complexity, emotional restraint, and a distinctive directing voice that has remained powerful well into his later years. France, a nation known for its deep love for film as an art form, has twice honored Eastwood with its highest civilian awards. In 1994, he was named a Commander of the Order of Arts and Letters, recognizing his exceptional contribution to the arts and his influence on cultural life worldwide. More than 10 years later, in 2007, he received the Legion of Honor, France's most prestigious decoration. This placed him among a small group of global figures whose achievements go beyond borders and generations. Together, these awards paint the picture of an artist whose influence is not limited to any single country or time period, but whose legacy continues to inspire and define cinema on a truly global scale. Clint Eastwood's marriage to Margaret "Maggie" Neville Johnson was the longest and in many ways the most complicated romantic chapter of his life. The two met in 1953 when Eastwood was still a struggling young man with no clear path to stardom. At the time, he was working a variety of jobs, including as a lifeguard and laborer, while trying to get acting opportunities with little success. Maggie Johnson was poised, intelligent, and grounded. She represented stability during a time when Eastwood's future was uncertain. They married on December 19, 1953, beginning a marriage that would last more than 30 years. In the early years of their marriage, Eastwood's career was slow to develop, and money problems were a constant worry. Maggie played a crucial role during this phase, giving emotional support as Eastwood dealt with repeated professional setbacks. When he finally achieved breakthrough success with the TV series Rawhide from 1959 to 1965, their lives changed dramatically. Fame brought wealth, visibility, and opportunity. But it also introduced problems that would test the marriage for years. As Eastwood's star rose through his famous roles in Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy and later as Inspector Harry Callahan in the Dirty Harry films, his demanding work schedule and increasing independence changed the dynamic of their relationship. Maggie mostly stayed out of the Hollywood spotlight, preferring privacy and a quieter home life. This difference between Eastwood's public image and Maggie's reserved nature became more obvious over time. The marriage was marked by long periods of being apart and well-documented affairs, which Eastwood later admitted to openly. Despite these difficulties, the couple remained legally married for decades. This arrangement reflected both emotional complexity and a mutual sense of responsibility. Maggie and Clint had 2 children together. Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, who became a successful jazz musician, and Allison Eastwood, born in 1972, who pursued careers in acting and filmmaking. Maggie's devotion to her children and her efforts to keep a sense of family continuity were central to her role during this time. In 1978, after 25 years of marriage, Maggie and Clint formally separated, though their divorce would not be final until 1984. The long gap between separation and divorce showed how deeply connected their lives and finances were. When the divorce was finalized, it was one of the most expensive settlements in Hollywood at the time. This reflected Eastwood's huge success and Maggie's long-standing role as his wife during his rise to fame. Despite the eventual end of their marriage, Maggie Johnson remains a foundational figure in Clint Eastwood's personal history. She was there before the fame, endured the pressures that came with it, and raised their children mostly away from Hollywood's excesses. Their relationship, though imperfect, shaped Eastwood's understanding of family, responsibility, and the personal cost of ambition. At 95, Clint Eastwood speaks with a clarity that comes only from having lived a full creative life without worrying about pleasing everyone. Looking back across more than 70 decades in Hollywood, Eastwood reflects not only on his own career, but on the changing tone of the industry and the people who have come to represent those shifts. When asked about Rob Reiner, Eastwood does not speak with bitterness or anger. Instead, his comments are measured, thoughtful, and rooted in a belief that Hollywood has drifted away from its original purpose, telling stories that unite rather than divide. "I've never had a problem with Rob as a filmmaker," Eastwood says. "He's talented. You don't make the movies he's made without understanding character and timing." Eastwood acknowledges Reiner's achievements, particularly his early work, which emphasized humor, warmth, and human connection. To Eastwood, those films represented a time when Hollywood was less consumed by ideological signaling and more focused on craft. What troubles Eastwood, however, is what he sees as a transformation, not just in Reiner, but in the culture around him. Somewhere along the line, the business stopped being about curiosity, Eastwood reflects. It became about certainty, and certainty is dangerous in art. In Eastwood's view, Reiner has become a symbol of a Hollywood class that no longer tolerates disagreement, mistaking moral conviction for moral superiority. Eastwood contrasts this with his own approach to film and public life. "I never believed my job was to tell people what to think," he says. "My job was to show people who they are." He explains that his films, even the controversial ones, were never meant to lecture audiences, but to make them think. Whether directing westerns, war films, or intimate character studies, Eastwood says he trusted viewers to draw their own conclusions. According to Eastwood, the real divide between himself and Reiner is not political but philosophical. "Rob wants to win arguments," Eastwood says. "I want to ask questions." He argues that Hollywood once thrived on creative friction, where artists with wildly different worldviews work together without demanding everyone think the same way. Today, Eastwood believes that spirit has disappeared. "There was a time when you could disagree and still respect each other," Eastwood recalls. "Now disagreement is treated like a moral failure." He suggests that Reiner's outspoken activism reflects a broader trend in which entertainers mistake being loud for being virtuous. To Eastwood, moral certainty closes doors that storytelling should leave open. Eastwood is careful not to present himself as a victim. "Nobody's silencing me," he says. "I've had my say." What concerns him is the younger generation of filmmakers who feel pressured to agree with approved opinions. "They're scared to be honest," he says. "And fear has never made good art." When asked whether he thinks Reiner understands this criticism, Eastwood pauses. "I don't know," he admits. "People hear what they want to hear." He emphasizes that his remarks are not personal attacks, but reflections on a system that rewards outrage over insight. "Rob didn't create that system," Eastwood says, "but he's comfortable inside it." At 95, Eastwood expresses no desire to settle scores. His tone is calm, almost detached. "Life's too short for grudges," he says. What remains important to him is legacy. Not awards or box office numbers, but the freedom to tell stories honestly. "I'd rather make a movie that makes people uncomfortable than one that tells them they're perfect." In the end, Eastwood's truth about Rob Reiner is not a revelation, but a lament. It is the sorrow of an artist watching an industry trade curiosity for conformity. "Hollywood used to be a place where outsiders belonged," Eastwood says. "Now it's a place where everyone's trying to prove they're on the inside." For Clint Eastwood, that change matters far more than any single name.